This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
India reports over 320,000 new COVID-19 cases amid severe second wave. Chad protests turn deadly as demonstrators demand civilian rule. And U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken to meet Nigeria's President Buhari virtually on Tuesday. Hello and welcome. You're watching Africa Live. We're coming to you live from Nairobi. I'm Hannah Viviers, and here with the latest in business is Rama.
That's right, Hannah. Here's what's coming up in the course of the hour. South Africa unveils a $100 million fund to support women-owned firms in the energy sector. And Tunisia announces relief measures designed to cushion firms affected by pandemic restrictions. We'll have the details on those stories and plenty more coming your way in the course of the hour. For now, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Hannah.
We're looking forward to that, Rama. We'll see you in a bit. Well, the number of new COVID-19 cases in India has remained above 300,000 for 6 straight days. A number of countries are sending aid to help India battle the new wave of infections. Ravinda Bawa has more from Delhi.
Well, experts are saying that, of course, it will not be enough, knowing at the way the infectivity rate is rising or is high in many places. In some places, it has dipped, but overall, it's quite high. And because of that, the number of infections are rising. So the rate at which the infections are rising and the rate at which the help is being pouring in or the new infrastructure is being ramped up, it will take time for the two to balance out. And for that, it is very important that we break the chain of the spread of this virus. We do keep those lockdowns in place, which of course it is not a national lockdown, but we know that cities like Delhi, Mumbai and other places have announced these lockdowns to break the chain, to actually slow down the infections so that people who are pouring into these hospitals get the correct treatment or treatment at the right time. Because right now it is a race against time. A lot of people are losing their lives because of the lack of oxygen, and we are seeing those visuals on a daily basis. We are hearing that news from all corners on a daily basis, and it is really unfortunate what is happening on the ground in India.
China says it stands ready to help India fight the coronavirus. Chinese State Councillor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi made the remark at a virtual meeting with 5 of his South Asian counterparts: Afghanistan, Pakistan, Nepal, Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. He also shared proposals on economic recovery and regional cooperation.
China is implementing President Xi Jinping's pledge to make vaccines a global public good, carrying out vaccine cooperation on a global scale. We are willing to promote vaccine cooperation with other countries via flexible means, such as free aid, commercial procurement and production under the framework of the Six-Nation Cooperation Mechanism.
The 6 nations reached a consensus to join hands in fighting the pandemic. They agreed to respect each other's efforts in coping with the crisis and support the WHO's leadership. They also agreed to enhance cooperation to help each other improve the ability to handle major public health emergencies. The cooperation includes vaccine distribution and production. Regarding the post-pandemic economic recovery, the 6 nations agreed to continue their Belt and Road cooperation and improve the livelihoods of the poor. They also agreed to oppose bullying, interference, and double standards in diplomacy, and to expand cooperation in various fields. Turkey is set to go into full lockdown on Thursday. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan made the announcement following record levels of COVID cases reported there last week. Michelle Bardavid reports.
The Turkish government's decision to impose a full national lockdown had been anticipated by many. On April 16th, daily new cases had reached record levels of 63,000. On Monday, daily new cases had decreased to about 37,000, but the Turkish president has stressed this figure needs to be much lower.
We have to bring down the number of our cases below 5,000 at a time when Europe entered a period of easing the restrictions. Otherwise, it will be inevitable for us to face with heavy consequences in every field from tourism to trade and education.
The new measures will take effect on April 29th, Thursday evening, and end on the morning of May 17th. That means the restrictions will be imposed during the entire month of Ramadan, as well as the Eid holiday. Many in Turkey were looking forward to a vacation during Eid, but intercity travel has been banned, except for those with official approval. Grades of all levels will be switching to online education as schools have been shut down completely. Public transportation will be operating at half capacity. All offices are ordered to close shop. There is an exception for essential workers, such as emergency service workers, health workers, and those in the food and manufacturing industries. This is the strictest lockdown imposed in Turkey so far. The government had been avoiding lockdowns to prevent a financial meltdown. However, bringing case levels down now is crucial to save the tourism industry as the summer season is about to begin. I'm Michal Bardavit for CGTN in Istanbul.
Here on the African continent, the Nigerian government says it is expecting nearly 30 million doses of the Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine. Nigeria aims to vaccinate at least 40% of its population before the end of the year. Reporting from Jos, here is Tesem Akende.
Some 29.8 million doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine have been promised to Nigeria, according to the head of the country's health body, Dr. Faisal Shuaib. No exact date has been given for the arrival of the vaccines, but Dr. Shuaib says the government signed off to receive the vaccines through the African Union. The primary healthcare boss also stated that more AstraZeneca vaccine deliveries through the COVAX facility are expected by the end of May or early June. He says that will allow Nigeria to administer the second dose of the vaccines it received in March to those who got their first jabs. Dr. Shuaib noted that nearly 1.2 million Nigerians have received their first dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine shots. That is almost 60% of the eligible groups targeted in the first phase. The government says it's making efforts to hit its target of vaccinating at least 40% of its citizens in 2021 and another 30% by the end of 2022. Tesem Akende, CGTN Jos, Nigeria.
In Chad, at least 2 people have been killed and 27 others injured in anti-military demonstrations. French President Emmanuel Macron and the President of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Félix Tshisekedi, have condemned the violent action against protesters. Both leaders are calling for a civilian military solution. Noktula Shabalala brings us that story.
It's been a week after the military took control of the country, following the death of President Idriss Déby. Demonstrators in Chad have taken to the streets, demanding a return to civilian rule. Tires have been burning in several neighborhoods in the capital N'Djamena. In a statement on Monday, the Military Transitional Council banned demonstrations while the country is still in mourning. Police have been patrolling the streets under pressure to stop protests. The African Union has expressed grave concern about the military takeover. French President Emmanuel Macron has condemned the violence against demonstrators.
We want to express our worry over the development of the situation in Chad, first of all by strongly condemning the repression of protests and the violence that took place this morning in N'Djamena. We are calling for the respect of the commitments that were taken by the Transitional Military Council, that of peace and political inclusion.
During a meeting in Paris, French President Macron and the President of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Félix Tshisekedi, said they remain in favor of a peaceful transition in Chad.
Let me be very clear. I gave my support to the integrity and the stability of Chad very clearly in N'Djamena. I support peaceful, democratic, inclusive transition. I do not support a plan of succession, and France will never be on the side of those who form this plan. The time has come to start a national political dialogue that is open to all Chadians. That is what is expected of the Transitional Military Council, and that is the same condition of our support.
On Chad, we are on the same wavelength. We need to quickly restore democratic order. I'm sticking to the same line of thought that I said in N'Djamena. We, of course, support the current stability, but under the condition that they go quickly towards the consolidation of democracy, of democratic institutions.
Meanwhile, in his first address to the nation, Military Council leader Mahamat Idris Deby has called on international support to improve the situation in the country.
Chad needs the national and international community to succeed in this transition, as the challenges are huge. Chad needs massive support from its partners to stabilize an economic and financial situation heavily impacted by the security, health, humanitarian and social situation. I also want to reassure our partners that Chad will continue to hold its own and take on its responsibilities in the fight against terrorism and will respect all its international commitments.
Noktula Shabalala, CGTN.
The United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken is expected to emphasize America's commitments to Nigeria's democracy and security in virtual talks with President Muhammadu Buhari. The meeting comes at a time when there has been an increase in violence and kidnappings in Nigeria. Phili Haza reports from Abuja.
The U.S. State Department confirmed that the talks between the Secretary of State and Nigeria's president will be held virtually on Tuesday. The meeting is part of Antony Blinken's first virtual trip to Africa. He is scheduled to hold talks with the governments of Kenya and Nigeria, as well as engage with young people from across the continent. His meeting with President Buhari is aimed at strengthening democratic governance, building lasting security, and promoting economic ties and diversification in the country. The meeting is coming at a time when Nigeria is plagued with a range of insecurity problems, including insurgency, kidnapping, and ethnic clashes. Secretary Blinken will also participate in a health partnership event to assess collaborations in combating the pandemic, as well as long-term U.S. investment in tackling infectious diseases. He's also scheduled to speak with Nigeria's Foreign Minister, Geoffrey Onyema, to re-evaluate the bilateral relationship. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja.
Well, during that virtual meeting with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari stated that the United States should consider moving the military headquarters for AFRICOM to Africa itself. According to a statement issued by the Nigerian presidency, Buhari viewed the move better to tackle the growing armed violence in West Africa and Central Africa, as well as the Gulf of Guinea, the Lake Chad region, and the Sahel. Africa Command is currently overseeing all its Africa operations from Stuttgart in Germany. Let's continue in Nigeria, where it's now being reported that the latest round of student kidnappings in northern Nigeria can be traced to as far back as December of last year. Hundreds of students have been abducted from their schools by what authorities say are criminal gangs and armed bandits. CGTN's Robert Nagila takes a closer look at the scale of that problem that Nigerian authorities are battling with.
On December 11th, more than 300 boys are kidnapped from their school in Kankara, Katsina State, by armed bandits. They are released 6 days later. On February 17th, 42 people, among them 27 students, are abducted from the Government Science Secondary School in Kagara, Niger State. One person is killed during the raid. They are released on February 27th after negotiations with the bandits. On the 26th February, 279 girls are abducted from a boarding school in Zamfara State. They are freed on March 2nd after a ransom was reportedly paid. On March 11th, 39 college students are taken hostage by bandits from their hostel outside the northwest city of Kaduna. Only 10 have been released. On April 20th, gunmen abducted about 20 students from the Greenfields University in Kaduna State. A rescue operation is still underway. 3 students have reportedly been killed by their abductors, bringing the death toll from the attack to 6. Now, UNICEF, the UN's children's agency, says more than 700 students have been kidnapped from schools in northern Nigeria since December. And Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has called the kidnappings barbaric terror attacks and pledged to fight them with every available resource. Back to you.
Well, it's time now for us to take a short break. In return, we'll be bringing you more news making headlines from across the continent.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent, to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo, Juba, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. You're watching Africa Live. Well, as China's economy shows a steady recovery from COVID-19, President Xi Jinping has been visiting some provinces and autonomous regions of the country. On his trip to southern China's Guangxi Zhuang Autonomous Region, he learned about efforts to boost local growth and protect ethnic culture as well as the environment. Jiang Shuai has more.
President Xi visited Nanning City, the capital of Guangxi, on Tuesday. He took in cultural performances by the Zhuang ethnic group and learned more about efforts to protect their heritage and to promote ethnic solidarity. On Monday, President Xi visited a food processing zone in the city of Liuzhou, which is the base for local specialty luosif and rice noodles. He said private enterprises should continue to strive, knowing they will have government support in challenging times.
Party and state will support and provide guidance when private enterprises come across difficulties. Therefore, private enterprises should strive to thrive bravely.
The special delicacy dates back to the 1980s, when night fairs started to emerge in Liuzhou. Featuring river snails and sour bamboo shoots, the dish became a sensation in China and created jobs for over 300,000 people. It is exported to more than 20 countries and regions in the world. President Xi also stressed the importance of innovation, especially as it begins its 14th five-year plan for economic development. He made the remarks to the Liugong Group, a leading Chinese machinery manufacturer in Liuzhou.
The equipment manufacturing industry is of paramount importance to high-quality development where innovation plays a key role. Only through innovation can we become stronger and better.
The Chinese president also called for efforts in ecological protection as he toured a park in Guilin, which is famous for its karst hills and caves. Jiang Shaoyi, CGTN.
The head of the UN's peacekeeping operations has asked the Security Council to consider a 6-month rollover for the mandate of its mission in South Sudan's Abyei region. Jean-Pierre Lacroix says this would give parties in Sudan and South Sudan more time to resolve security issues in the oil-rich contested area. CGTN's Nokutula Shabalala reports.
Abyei is South Sudan's hotly contested region. The area sits on the Sudan and South Sudanese border. Both countries have claimed ownership of the oil-rich region. The 2005 peace deal that led to South Sudan's independence from Sudan required both Khartoum and Juba to work out the final status of the region. But it is still unresolved. In the meantime, the area is a theater for armed groups and ethnic clashes.
Mr. President, the general security situation in the Abyei area during the reporting period has been relatively calm, albeit volatile and unpredictable. The most prevalent threats to security were shooting incidents and the increased presence of unidentified armed groups. Out of 47 incidents recorded, 23 were attacks on civilians that resulted in 5 fatalities and serious injuries.
Speaking at a virtual meeting of the UN Security Council, the UN peacekeeping chief says continued dialogue between Sudan and South Sudan has yielded many agreements.
The main political highlight of this reporting period was the Joint Political and Security Mechanism JPSM meeting hosted by the government of the Sudan on the 28th and the 29th of October 2020. During the meeting, several important issues were agreed upon, including the establishment of checkpoints in Abyei, the introduction of search and seize operations, the deployment of joint military observer teams throughout Abyei area, the need for regular JPSM and AJOC meetings, and the need for progress on joint border verification and monitoring mechanism and border-related benchmarks.
However, the talks did not translate into significant improvements on the ground in Abyei, as the security situation remains tense. The head of peace operations in the United Nations wants the UN mission for Abyei to be extended. Since 2011, there are nearly 3,700 UN peacekeeping troops in the area.
I would like to highlight that all parties continue to recognize the usefulness and relevance of UNISFA and recognize that the mission has also been instrumental in addressing tensions between the Dinka and the Miseria communities through community dialogue and reconciliation initiatives, despite operational constraints due to administrative bottlenecks. In view of the above, I would request that the Security Council considers a rollover mandate for UNISFA for 6 months until the 15th of October 2021, in order to give the parties the space to discuss future arrangements and the way forward.
The UN says improvement of bilateral relations between Sudan and South Sudan can stabilize Abyei and, in turn, help strengthen regional stability in the Horn of Africa. Noktula Shabalala, CGTN.
Let's head over to South Africa now, where President Cyril Ramaphosa has urged people in the country to appreciate and celebrate its diversity. He was speaking during the official Freedom Day celebrations. South Africa is celebrating 27 years since the birth of its democracy. CGTN's Yolisa Njamela has more.
The 27th of April 2021 marks 27 years since the end of apartheid's regime. It's also the day when all South Africans were given a right to vote in the first democratic elections. This year's Freedom Day celebrations are held under the theme, The Year of Charlotte Maxeke, the meaning of freedom under COVID-19. Maxeke is celebrated for being the first black woman to graduate with a university degree, as well as being one of the founders of the Bantu Women's League, which later became the ANC Women's League.
Many have paid the ultimate price so that we are able to breathe the clean air of freedom today. Over the years, we have encountered and overcome many challenges. But there are still many challenges that we are yet to overcome. These are problems common to all of us, and they impact on all of us. But like those who came before us, we understand that no challenge is too great that it cannot be overcome.
The president has also asked South Africans to unite in fighting social ills, particularly gender-based violence. South Africa has a femicide rate that's 5 times higher than the global average.
Let us be guided by our loyalty alone. And our loyalty should be to our country. The struggles waged by our forebears were not for themselves alone. They were for the generations yet to come. We must take a firm stand against the social ills that prevent the men and the women and children of South Africa from living lives of freedom. We must take a firm stand against violence that is perpetrated against women and children. We must speak out and report any instances of gender-based violence, even if the perpetrators are close to us.
President Ramaphosa reminded South Africans to celebrate their diversity and nationhood, despite all the challenges they faced.
Let us acknowledge and let us appreciate, and more importantly, let us celebrate the diversity of this country, for it is what makes us who we are. We may come from different backgrounds and different regions in our country, but we call ourselves South Africans with pride.
Ramaphosa also emphasized that there's an urgent need to transform the ownership, control, and management of the economy so that black South Africans are fully represented and equally benefit. Yolisa Njamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Meanwhile, South Africans have designed interesting innovations since the COVID-19 pandemic hit over a year ago. Among their list of creations were rapid testing kits, self-isolation pods, and ultra-cold storage freezers. Well, now, one entrepreneur is developing facial recognition technology that can identify people even when they're wearing face masks. CGTN's Julie Shire brings us this fascinating story.
The wearing of masks to guard against COVID-19 is compulsory in South Africa and many other countries. It's posed a challenge when identifying people at banks, airports, or when you're simply trying to unlock your phone. One South African entrepreneur is working on finding a solution to identify people without having to remove their masks.
When we got hit by this COVID-19 virus, we were told that we are not supposed to move around touching surfaces. So we had to look for a contactless modality and at the same time look at the question of accuracy. Fingerprint is at the top, and then facial recognition is the second most accurate modality.
The technology uses a limited amount of facial features left exposed by the mask, but it requires prior registration on a database. The accuracy is yet to be fully tested and approved by the country's Department of Trade and Industry.
We actually had to come up with a solution that uses a blend or a mixture of conventional image processing techniques and what we call artificial intelligence techniques. You can actually recognize a person as they walk through the terminal without you having to ask them to take their mask off.
Another innovation awaiting validation is a mobile ultra-cold freezer, which could be a game changer in vaccine delivery to poor and remote areas globally.
It's not just COVID vaccines. Think about measles, mumps, even just the flu jab. All of these vaccines, if you're going to store them for a long period of time, you have to store them at -20 or lower. Ebola, for example, is -70. And so you don't have that many remote locations where you've got access to that kind of cooling power.
The CryoVac is battery powered and can last for close to a month without being charged. It can also be used to transport large amounts of vaccine to urban areas or far-flung places.
You can get something like 600,000 vaccines in one aircraft. It simplifies your entire logistics chain, but more importantly, it means that you can dump it in the field and you can forget about it in the sun, and for 25 days, you know that you will have GPS control, you will have temperature monitoring.
COVID-19 is one of the most serious challenges faced by the globe. The World Health Organization estimates the continent has stepped up, accounting for 12.8% of all technological innovations piloted or adopted in 2020. Julie Shara, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
Let's cross over to East Africa now, where in Uganda, the police force has dismissed 153 officers over corruption and other disciplinary issues. According to a spokesperson, the police standards body found proof that the officers had discredited the force. For more details, here is Isabel Nakiria.
Ugandan police say some of the dismissed officers continuously involved themselves in fraudulent activities even after several warnings. Others were relieved from work over neglect of duty and drunkenness. The incidents of misconduct were committed between 2015 and 2019. The police spokesperson says the move to punish the officers is meant to clean the image of the force.
As a force, we expect the highest professional standards from all our officers. Any allegations of behavior that do not meet the set standards are rigorously investigated in accordance with the Police Act and standing orders. We believe this is going to help the public to have confidence in police officers who have a duty to be honest, act with integrity, and not compromise or abuse their position.
In 2020, the Uganda Police Force was named as the most corrupt public institution in the country by the Inspectorate of Government and the Uganda Bureau of Standards. Its public survey suggests that most Ugandans do not trust the police. The police said the actions taken to remove the officers will help reduce the many complaints reported against the force. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
Meanwhile, Tanzania's President Samia Suluhu Hassan has freed more than 5,000 prisoners as the country celebrates Union Day. The celebrations mark 57 years since the coming together of Tanganyika and Zanzibar to form the Republic of Tanzania in 1964. CGTN's Daniel Kijo reports.
Pardoning prisoners on Union Day is an annual tradition. The head of state is given powers by law to free prisoners during select national public holidays. Tanzania's President Samia Suluhu Hassan honored this practice by releasing and reducing sentences of 5,001 prisoners held in various prisons across the country. Of these prisoners, 1,516 were released after serving more than a quarter of their sentence. This is the minimum requirement as per Tanzania's Prisons Act. The president also announced that another 3,485 inmates will have their sentences reduced. A statement from the president's office further explained that these 3,485 prisoners that have had their sentences reduced will continue to serve the remaining part of their sentences in prison. Criteria for being released include suffering from serious illnesses, already having served the majority of one's sentence, being pregnant while in prison, and committing more minor crimes. President Samia called on all released prisoners to make good use of the training they received while in prison and to join their fellow citizens in leading responsible lives. She also reminded the released prisoners to respect and comply with the national laws. Last year, the late President John Magufuli pardoned 3,973 prisoners in order to ease congestion in prisons. About 35,000 inmates are reported to be in the country's jails. Daniel Kijo, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
Well, I'll be standing by to bring you more news, including what's happening in the world of sport. But for now, let's take a look at what's happening in business with Raman.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Here's what's coming up in business news. South Africa unveils a $100 million fund to support women-owned companies in the energy sector. And Tunisia announces relief measures to cushion companies affected by pandemic restrictions.
This has taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time, it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Over the last 14 hours of rain.
Welcome back to the program. Now, as South Africa continues to experience an energy crisis, load shedding has become part of the normal routine, and it's continuously crippling the economy. Load shedding is essentially a measure of last resort being used by the national power supplier, Eskom, to prevent a collapse of the power system countrywide. Now, to help mitigate this issue, a $104 million fund has been set up to help women-owned enterprises produce electricity but also create jobs in renewable energy at the same time. Here's CGTN's Yolisa Njamela with that story.
The fund seeks to invest in businesses and energy projects. Its other aim is to change the energy landscape by supporting players in the Renewable Energy Independent Power Producer Procurement Program. The fund was made available by Matlago Financial Services, a 100% black women-owned and managed entity. This is a major deal, considering that the energy sector in South Africa still remains in white hands.
Matlago is an alternative investment company.
We focus on socio-economic developmental assets because our passion is growing and driving the economy. And as a fund, we're going to be looking at investing in energy projects, but then we're not only going to end at energy projects, we are also going to invest in energy assets as well and companies. We're going to focus on the entire energy value chain. I mean, South Africa has been we've been exposed to load shedding. The energy gap, it's like so huge. So our fund actually seeks to bridge that gap.
The company is co-owned by sisters Makule Mupita and Meta Mhlari. The team has already managed over 4 billion rand in funds and now wants to see black participants, especially women, as key players in the sector.
Participation of women especially is still under 30%. But then even that 30%, actually, if you took out the funding that has been put up by all these different structures, you actually come down to less than 6% of black people and women representation. So what we seek to do as also the Black Energy Professionals Association, we seek to deliver on influence on policy changes so that the imbalances of the past can really be removed.
The fund is a first of its kind here in South Africa.
At this point in time, there is no fund that is 100% owned by black women. And it's not only owned by black women, the team is also black women. And not only just a team because they are women, the team have been at the forefront of infrastructure development. Together, they have over 40 years experience in infrastructure, in energy advisory, in project development, in the full value chain.
Mhlari emphasized that sustainable investments are at the core of their focus. The group also intends to support South Africa's energy sector's recovery. Yolisa Njomela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
On to North Africa now, where authorities in Tunisia have announced a range of relief measures designed to cushion companies affected by the pandemic and those that have not been able to settle their tax dues, not just for 2020, but for the year before that too. As CGTN's Alan Chachi now explains, companies have been given a grace period of up to 7 years to settle their tax dues to the state.
The Tunisian government explained that this payment advantage will include companies which have not yet concluded payment schedules for their tax debts for 2019 and 2020. Prime Minister Hisham Meshishi said the new tax facilities are part of the economic rescue plan.
The measure is part of the economic rescue plan, which was developed with our social partners. The government's willing to support companies to overcome this difficult period. We will save the affected SMEs, protect jobs, and save the country's economy.
Tunisian entrepreneurs have welcomed the state initiative. However, many business owners believe the government was too slow to react to the economic crisis.
The COVID-19 pandemic has devastated many sectors and affected nearly all private companies. The role of the state is decisive. The government was absent for more than a year since the start of the health and the economic crisis. The recent measures will help companies improve liquidity.
According to the National Institute of Statistics and the National Organization of Entrepreneurs, more Tunisian firms face specter of bankruptcy due to the COVID-19-induced economic crisis.
More than 60% of enterprises, or 450,000 companies in Tunisia, are threatened with bankruptcy. More than 70,000 SMEs have definitely closed. The numbers are shocking. Hundreds of thousands of workers have lost their jobs. The new government measures in favor of companies are important, but we need more support and incentives.
In addition to the tax payment advantages, the Ministry of Finance has also launched a new support mechanism. More than 500 SMEs will benefit from the endowment line of support for the financial restructuring this year.
As businesses are forced to stop operations, the Tunisian government has issued several tax incentives to mitigate the economic and social impact of the crisis. Authorities assert that the relief program for SMEs affected by the pandemic will protect up to 200,000 jobs. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Away from the continent now. The first quarter of 2021, China's investment in countries along the Belt and Road Initiative maintained steady growth. Some 3,400 trains travelled between China and Europe during the period. That's 75% more than the same period a year earlier. As CGTN's Mark Hannah reports, the boost comes as the first direct freight trains from southwestern China to the Dutch capital of Amsterdam and the British port city of Felixstowe departed, marking the formal opening of 2 more stops along this transportation hub.
2 freight trains carrying electronic devices and medical supplies have left for Amsterdam and Felixstowe on the 8th anniversary of the Chengdu-Europe Railway Express. They are the latest additions to the now 61 lines of the Chengdu International Railway Port, which plays a vital part in building southwest China into a westbound gateway for foreign trade.
The eastbound cargo is also growing very rapidly, so we found a lot of new clients for that connection. We started first with once a week, and currently we are already running the train with 4 times a week. And that's not only milk powder, but it's also beer and cars.
The advantages of rail transport have been further recognized by businesses in foreign trade. For example, the cost is only 1/8 that of air freight, and the time needed is only 1/3 that of maritime shipping. Rail is much more reliable, especially in the post-epidemic era.
This railway port not only connects businesses in the Chongqing-Chengdu area with customers in Europe, but also other Chinese cities. So far, the port has cooperated with 20 other transportation hubs to facilitate internal economic circulation.
On Monday, the Chengdu Railway Port signed cooperation terms with one of the largest shipping ports in East China, the Zhoushan Port. It's part of plans to optimize logistics services for businesses in East Asia. CGTN, Chengdu.
We're still in the world's second largest economy. With China having brought the coronavirus pandemic under control within its borders, life over there is getting back to normal. But as our reporter Liu Jiaxin now explores, day-to-day work for many people may never be the same again.
Work, the power source of urban vitality. Even if you are not a workaholic, let's just admit that most of your life gives way to office hours. But when the epidemic struck, some companies had to make a choice.
We actually started with a staggered work arrangement, where only half of our team members came to work in the office.
Since COVID-19 hit, I've been carrying mobile phones and computers with me all the time. My work is somewhat flexible. My workplace can be wherever I want.
For many people working for a digital economy, a mobile device and a smooth network will do the job. But the only issue is offline office really optional?
I'm really looking forward to the combination of working from home and working in the office. Remote work is actually relatively advanced, but at present, it has its own challenges, like communication between colleagues. People find it better to work with their peers rather than working on their own. And some of the benefits of working at the company's office are really attractive.
With the epidemic largely under control in China, most companies have returned to their pre-epidemic mode of work. In other countries and regions, remote work, more flexible office hours, and 4-day work weeks are becoming more popular. 20% of Canadian tech workers are able to work from home on a regular basis. And elsewhere, leaders in New Zealand and Finland are already advocating shorter working hours to boost domestic spending. Liu Jiaxin, CGTN, Beijing.
Final story in the segment comes to you from Tanzania. One of the country's stated goals is to elevate the East African nation from its current middle-income status. To do that, the government plans to produce a lot more industrial output, and that in turn requires enormous demand for electricity. We'll bring you the story now of one inventor who's attempting to meet Tanzania's growing energy needs by creating generators at home. Here's Isaac Lucando with that story.
This workshop might be mistaken for a junkyard, but what comes out of it is enlightening.
The strange-looking gadgets strewn across the room conceal an electricity generator that may revolutionize electricity generation in Tanzania. Rogers Msuya, its 52-year-old inventor, says what's unique about the generator is that it uses magnets to generate electricity.
I am an expert in water pumps and electricity generating machines, but the difference is that the generators I make don't use fuel, they use free energy. So I've been researching on getting energy without using energy.
The idea of a free energy generator, or generating power from a never-ending source like a magnet, is not a new one. What got the government interested in Msuya's invention is his ability to make easy-to-use units that generate up to 155 kilovolts of electricity that can even power a street.
An expert from the government confirmed that the magnets can indeed generate electricity. Other experts went on to satisfactorily measure the amount of electricity generated and saw that by using this technology, it is possible to generate large amounts of electricity that could be entered into the national grid.
Earlier this year, the Ministry of Energy formally recognized Msuya and his invention, and is now looking at ways to partner with him. With a total of 1,600 megawatts of electricity currently being generated in the country, the government wants to add on other sources of electricity in addition to hydropower, solar, geothermal, and wind power that are already in use. According to the government, Tanzania's long-term plans are to increase the country's electricity capacity to 10,000 megawatts from various sources by 2025. The government sees the inventions of people like Rogers Msuya as key to reaching this goal. With only a primary school education, Msuya's success has been fueled by an intense love of electrical engineering. Having once made a helicopter that actually worked, he says his main challenge is accessing capital to realize all the ideas he has.
Any money I get, however little, I invest in these projects. I might have some money in my mobile money wallet, but I direct everything here because if you don't create, what will you have to show? If you don't research, what will you have to say?
Msuya makes a living by selling the generators he makes to whoever's interested. However, he's not yet done inventing. He says he aims to pass on his skills to the younger generation and keep providing energy solutions to light up his country and the African continent. Isaac Lukando, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
And I'll leave it there for the time being. I'll be back at the top of the hour, though. We'll be heading over to Uganda at the top of the hour. It's become the second African country after Zambia to say, yeah, we'd like to reschedule some of our debts. But how did the country end up in this situation? And how big of a problem do they have as far as public debt is concerned? We'll have some answers for you live from Kampala at 1800 GMT. See you then. For now, back to Hannah.
We'll see you then, Rama. Well, let's now take a short break and return your sport news, including Cameroonian UFC heavyweight champion Francis Ngannou returns home to heroes' welcome.